Influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hey there, thank you for joining us for episode 99 of Going Ringside. So glad you could be with us. And we, if you can't tell, are going old school today. And I'm very excited about that because, as you know, here at Going Ringside, we get the biggest stars in the world. And in the last few months, we've had a lot of the more modern stars. We had Bayley, we had Meechin, we had Adam Cole last week. Great shows. Go check them out right now in the archives. We've had a lot of the new stars, obviously, and we love to get the new stars, but I'm an old school guy. I love the old school stars, and one of the best ever, Jimmy Hart. The Mouth of the South is here, and I'm excited to talk to him. Jimmy Hart is arguably top 5 manager all time, maybe top 3, maybe top 2. It's all in the eye of the beholder, but Jimmy's also always in the top of the conversation for greatest managers ever. And I got a personal story. Jimmy Hart was actually my very first wrestling interview. So it was about, I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it in the archives. Maybe I'll look for someday, put it on Going Ringside TikTok channel at some point if I find it. But I'm covering a SmackDown probably 15 years ago in my other job, as a TV reporter. I'm just there, and Jimmy Hart was out front of the arena here in Jacksonville. He had the megaphone, and when I interviewed him, I learned something about wrestlers. I have interviewed every type of public figure imaginable. I've interviewed presidents, I've interviewed governors, I've interviewed pro athletes, I've interviewed killers, time and time again. But you know who the best interviews always are, as you've seen here on Going Ringside? It's the wrestlers. Because when the camera is on, they are on, and they are great. I learned that when I interviewed Ric Flair early on. But my very first wrestling interview was Mouth of the South. And he was great. Got his megaphone, got in my face. It was everything I could have hoped for. Jimmy Hart has a legacy, and he's one of those guys, when you talk about wrestlers who are getting older, Jimmy Hart has aged, everyone says, maybe better than anyone. Because look at this. This is his image at the WrestleCon, the River City Wrestling Con, where I spoke to him. That's Jimmy Hart maybe 40 years ago. That's Jimmy Hart today. There's not that much difference. I don't know what Jimmy Hart's got going on, but he's aging as well as anyone I've ever seen. And he had such a great legacy. I really first knew Jimmy Hart as a kid when he was a manager in WWF, managing everyone. The Hart Foundation, of course, Honky Tonk Man, when he joined Greg Valentine, became Rhythm and Blues, and so many more. Jimmy Hart, you had kind of Jimmy Hart, you had Bobby Heenan. Those, I think, were the two clutch managers in the golden era of WWF. Then, by the early 90s, Jimmy leaves and goes to WCW, along with the Hulkster, Brutus Beefcake. They kind of had this kind of triangle of guys that moved over, and you had Beefcake and Jimmy, and they would go everywhere Hulkster went. And that's when Jimmy kind of transitioned. He had been just a heel manager not affiliated with Hulkster, but by WCW, he and Hulkster were like that. He managed, I think, the Nasty Boys and some other groups, but you always kind of at this point on, by the early 90s, when you thought of Jimmy Hart, you thought of Hulk Hogan. They're still close today. I mean, I see the Hulkster doing his karaoke down at his spot down in Tampa and Clearwater area. Jimmy's still part of that. Jimmy's still very active, doing a lot today, and I was so excited to catch up with him. We're going to bring him up here in a minute. After the Jimmy interview, Victoria Crawford is back with us in studio today. We're going to talk a little about the new AEW and WWE streaming deals, which are now starting on your TV with AEW on Max. Monday Night Raw is going to Netflix. We're going to talk about a few other things going on in the wrestling world right now. You want to hear that? We're really picking out what's going on right now in the wrestling world. But right now, we are going to take a throwback to one of the greatest of all time, one of the interviews I was most excited to get because I love old school guys. And by the way, there's going to be a lot more old school guys in weeks to come. I'm really starting 2025 off with a lot of old school superstars that I love, that I was excited to sit down and talk to. So they'll be coming weeks. So if you're an old school wrestling fan, keep an eye on Going Ringside over the next few months. We're going to have a lot of great stars, and we're kicking it off with Jimmy Hart. So let's get to it. Here is our first interview, the Mouth of the South, here is Jimmy Hart. Well, we are excited to be joined now by Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, the man himself, sir.
Scotty, baby, is this unbelievable? Look, I'm here with WrestleMania over here. Promotions. What a great time. We've got all kind of superstars and legends that are going to be here today. I'm right across the hallway from my good friend Tugboat, who I used to manage. Tatanka's next to me. He used to chase me around the ring all the time.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome, man.
How have you been doing? What's going on in your life now?
You know what? We've been busy. Like my Hall of Fame ring, WWE Hall of Fame ring?
Oh, yeah, that is very nice.
You know, last night I was watching SmackDown, and it brought back so many great memories of when we used to run around the ring all the time. But, you know, everything is beautiful, man. It's great to see all my old friends and old buddies here. I think Sting's here today, and Lita's here, and just so many great superstars are going to be here. So we invite all the fans to come out and have a great time.
You look probably better than any wrestler of your age.
Oh,
how do you keep it so good?
You know what? I've never smoked. I've never drank, and so hopefully that's been one of the reasons why. And I eat a lot of fruit and a lot of vegetables.
Now, I always wondered, how did your transition from WWF to WCW happen? Because you were a fixture in WWF through the 80s.
Well, what happened, Hook and I have been friends for 43 years.
Yeah.
Hook left. We left to go do a show called Thunder in Paradise. We had really no plan of joining another wrestling company. While we were doing Thunder in Paradise at Disney Studios, Eric Bischoff and Ric Flair came by. When they came by, they said, Hook, he said, how would you and Jimmy like to join WCW? And we said, feet don't fail us now. But, but now I'm back with WWE again. So I'm like a pimple on prom night. It's hard to get rid of me.
What was it like when you got to WCW? Was there any tension at all? Because you guys were coming from the competition at the time from WWF. What was that like?
No, it was great. All of our friends were there. Sting was there, which we knew him forever. And, of course, Ric Flair, who we love, and everybody else does, too. But he was there, so a lot of our buddies and friends were already there. So it was like kind of going to visit an old family relative.
Now, I'm going out of order. I'm going backwards a little to your Hart Foundation time with Brett and the Anvil. Like, you guys became one of the greatest teams of all. Many argue the greatest team of all time.
The Hart Foundation, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Brett the Hitman Hart. But you forget about my other teams, too. I had the Nasty Boys, Knobs and Sags, the Rougeau brothers, Jock and Raymond. I had Earthquake and Typhoon. And then I had Terry and Dory Funk. And the list goes on and on, too. But, I was started in Memphis by Jerry the King Lawler, of course, and we had all those Andy Kaufman series that we did back in the day.
Yeah.
But, and can you believe we're still alive and kicking here at River City Wrestling Con? It's going to be great.
So why did they give you so many teams? Why were you so successful with so many teams all those years?
Well, Scotty, baby, I believe that everybody realized that Jimmy Hart was going to be on time. Jimmy Hart was going to be always enthusiastic. I've got to tell you this. People always ask me why I dress in these crazy jackets like this, right?
Yeah.
The reason why is because when I was in a band called the Gentrys and I was on tour with Dick Clark many, many years ago, he said this. He said, if you're going to be in the entertainment business, remember one thing. If you dress like the audience, one day you're going to wind up sitting in the audience.
And before we go, does the megaphone still work?
Oh, my God, the megaphone. No, you know what? When you fly on the plane now, you have to take the batteries out, but because they won't let you fly on the plane. But Vince
I think TSA should give you an exception.
But they should be. But, Vince brought me this megaphone many, many years ago, and we painted it up, we fixed it up, and it's been a major part of my gimmick,
Jimmy Hart, Mouth of the South, thank you so much, sir. We'll let you get back to signing autographs.
We love you, baby. Thank you so much.
Thank
you,
Jimmy. So I was so excited to talk to Jimmy. Now, Victoria Crawford's back with us. He's one of I'm marking out. I'm a child again when I see Jimmy Hart, who is aged, I think, better than any wrestler ever. I think he's in his 80s.
No, really?
I think he is. I got to confirm that. You can check it out, but I think I'm right on that. He is a machine. He keeps going.
He's remarkable.
Yeah.
He's remarkable. He's always like a beam of sunshine. He's always like, everything's groovy, baby, or everything.
Yes!
He's always like, everything's life, baby, or love, baby.
And I forgot until this very moment, he was the very first wrestling interview I ever did. So it was 15 years ago. I was not anywhere in the wrestling world. Just the TV station here, Channel 4, let me go cover, it was either Raw or SmackDown was in town. And Jimmy Hart was out in front of the arena with a megaphone. And I went and interviewed him, and that's when I realized that wrestlers are always on if there's a camera there. Like, that was amazing to me. Like, it was everything I hoped it would be.
Oh, good.
Do you notice the great wrestlers are the ones that if there's a camera there, they're going?
Oh, good, yes. Yeah, there's a lot of greats, like including like Sergeant Slaughter. He's one of my favorites.
I saw you post him,
Love him.
put you in the Cobra Clutch recently. He did that to me, and that will be on an upcoming show. Sarge is great.
He's great. We're always in gimmick, but Jimmy Hart, he's fantastic. I've known him most of my career, and just, you know, he's part of those Florida boys, you know, and he's just really given me so much insight along the way of my career too. And then he's always like, everything's groovy, baby.
He is so great. He's everything I want him to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm doing this right, this is released on New Year's Day.
Woo!
So we need to start talking about the major structural changes to the industry. I was on Netflix just randomly watching crap, and everything is branded Monday Night Raw. We have Adam Cole on last episode.
Right.
He's talking about the Max deal, another huge streaming platform for AEW. I mean, when you got into it, it was, I want to say, you were on USA? Does that sound right?
USA, does the WB seem
yeah,
to ring any
CW
bells?
or WB,
yeah,
whatever
CW,
it was.
Yeah, CW. I don't
So
think...
it's different now. It's different.
It's definitely different. I was going to say UPN, but I don't think I go back that far.
I do, but I know what you're talking about. They were, I think you had two channels. You had UPN and WB, and then they merged into CW, which we have today where NXT is.
Perfect.
Yes. I remember this because I am that old. Yes, I am that old. Not as old as Jimmy Hart, but on my way.
Oh, my God.
Sorry, Jimmy. So let's talk. So they go to the streaming platforms.
Correct.
One thing Adam Cole told me that I thought was really interesting is they know how to market to diehard wrestling fans. Diehard wrestling fans and marks are going to find wrestling. It's you and I, we live and breathe the wrestling. But for the casual fans, like, I think it was a big deal. It just meant something to me when I turned on Netflix and all I saw all over the screen was Monday Night Raw.
Yes.
Like, it's a whole new group of people to see it.
I mean, streaming is just such an infinite machine.
Yeah.
Just so large. So obviously, you know, there's a lot of people flocking there that are series watcher, binge show watchers, you know, all those things in wrestling. It's just like the perfect.
It's great binge.
Yes, it's great binge.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So do you think it showing, and for AEW too, let's do it one at a time. Let's do WWE on Netflix. So WWE on Netflix, I think it's immediately probably going to take off for them. I think it's the biggest deal Netflix has ever done to do live programming on the show, because that's different. You're used to taped Walking Dead or taped whatever.
Right.
I just rewatched Lost.
Right.
But to do a live show on Netflix, that's a big deal for them.
I love it. I love it. It's like the evolution of television. I mean, it's almost like our social medias. We can go from our phone and go live. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like the next step for broadband's maturity and evolution, too, to have live sports entertainment.
Now, I think the AEW deal is different because I am of the impression that, like, if I go to Netflix, I see WWE Raw there, I immediately know what that is. Mm-hmm. I think you've got millions of people who turn into Max and go, what's this? I don't know what this AEW thing is, which for them I think is good. I mean, you get more eyeballs on people, because I don't think as many people know AEW. I mean, WWE is like the NFL. AEW wants to get there, but they're not there yet. I think getting new eyeballs helps.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And I think when the people get invested in, like, each company's stories, their characters, mm-hmm. they'll see such a difference. And with so much wrestling beyond there, they'll have the option to choosing. I think for me, I like to be a fan with options. I want to see a little bit of everything, a little bit of different styles, and then dive in deeper when I see some of the styles merging in one area, you know, because wrestling's constantly changing, the talent's constantly changing, adding things to our repertoire, you know, and I think something like Netflix and streaming, with the talent and the skills and the ability to perform at that level, either AEW or WWE, but live in front of so many people, I think a platform like Netflix and Max are equally matched. You know, they're large, from movies to TV streaming to, it's just, I like it.
And the parents can sit, not that it's good parenting. We're not a good parenting show or a wrestling show. The parents could theoretically sit their kids in front of Netflix or Max and say, kids, do your thing, and they would sit and get they would grow up on a wrestling product they might not have seen. Because a lot of younger generation, I mean, I'm just thinking this now out loud, if I'm 11 years old, I'm not going to go to TBS or TNT or USA to get my stuff. I'm going to watch it on Netflix or Max. And as they usher in this new generation, this new era of viewers, because frankly, a lot of you didn't, but I did. I started as a kid. You started as kind of an adult when you were getting into it. But a lot of people grow up on this stuff,
right.
And they start, and that's where kids are. They're on Netflix, they're on Max. They're honestly not clicking through the channels like old people like me do.
You're so funny, but also too the accessibility, like for international people that now can access internet.
Yep.
Whether it's because we've had shows, whether they're in like Cape Town, South Africa, or Afghanistan and stuff.
You're hitting on something I want to ask. Keep going.
It's just, to me, for the industry to grow, it has to be accessible. So I think Netflix, Max, with the time that they're maturing for streaming, at the time of like all of our accessibility to be our messages, wrestling can take care of itself,
You mentioned South Africa and Afghanistan. So we had Obafemi with NXT on the show a few months back, and he was talking about how he'd love to do not South Africa, mainland continent Africa, to do a PLE. What is it like when you go to these other countries? Because you went to a lot of them. I mean, are the fans just as rabid there?
Oh, yeah.
They are.
Oh, yeah. So I remember doing shows in Johannesburg because we would tour there as much as we could, but it would probably be maybe every year and a half, 2 years. And, that, what is it? Distance makes the heart grow fonder, but in a sense of the, wrestling being enjoyed all for durations of years, like they wait patiently.
It's why, so I got out of wrestling, I don't know how much I've told you about. I get married. The wife's like, what is this wrestling stuff? Not a fan. Still not a fan. And I got away from wrestling for a while. Got back into it a few years ago, right around the time they were doing all these Saudi Arabia trips. And I was like, at the time, the first glance, I'm like, why Saudi Arabia? But there's big money there. And there's interest in countries like that.
Yeah.
That they'll pay, to get them there. You say absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, and there's so many dynamics when it comes to someone that loves wrestling. Either I've met so many people that have either tried to do the wrestling and just have such a deeper experience and love for it because they tried, or maybe they tried, got injured, maybe they tried and just think that it's probably better for someone else, whatever. The way the fans can interact with the passion of it through their own experience with it, like, oh, my parents used to watch it, oh, I tried lacing up a boots, oh, my dad used to wrestle. I think now being able to be accessible to like the Afghanistan, anywhere there's accessible internet, right? We're gonna be able to, like that. I think that's just the way the industry can survive and get broader, because there are so many companies. There are companies coming up, like there's WOW, Glows, like there's other promotions that maybe some wrestling fans haven't seen yet, based on a smaller platform. There's a Title Network. That's the one that streamed my last match live.
With Jordan Grace.
Yeah, and that was an experience because that's another way of these other promotions to get eyes and get an audience base. Like, and then there was like the docuseries on Netflix, wrestling, the OVW thing.
Yeah, and we had that. We had OVW on the show. Go check that out. Al Snow and his students on with us a few months ago. Yeah, they were, and that was weird to me, and it was kind of probably what you went through. That was indie wrestlers getting global fame overnight, which has got to be jarring.
I can't even imagine. I think kind of in our experience at WWE, like Total Divas, that was kind of like an overnight thing, because even in that sense, a lot of the, that's how a lot of the young females that maybe didn't watch wrestling or, we have a boy in the home, but they definitely found it on E and that girly aesthetic.
I remember hearing from some women at the time who knew nothing about wrestling, could have cared less about Monday Night Raw, didn't know what it was, but they watched Total Divas.
Yeah.
And that matters. I mean, that's ratings for your that's essentially why, like a news station doing a wrestling show.
Yeah, I mean,
I could care less what goes on the news, but I'll watch your wrestling show.
Exactly. And I mean, To be able to tell your stories, keep those stories, the never-ending story. That's what's taken me by surprise is now that I'm not so much as in a company relationship, still being deeply involved in the business, my story is totally beginning to change. It has a little more, has more series.
I got to ask you about something else. It's on your body right now, on your left index finger. You mentioned the Jordan Grace fight. How's the healing coming?
It's good, it's good. This injury, so I had a broken nail bed and then wrestled with this, and then it just kind of
got worse.
Got worse, yeah. It became an infection, and it was quite something. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
But it's getting better?
It's getting better. That's what everyone always asks. Is it getting better? I'm like, yes, but it was pretty terrifying.
Okay, well, Victoria, we will see you back here next year.
Yes.
As you know, I think this comes out. No, we'll see you back later this year. I think right now you're watching this in 2025. So let's get to our next segment. So I appreciate Victoria joining us again. We'll see her back here in a few weeks. And of course, Jimmy for joining us. But next week, if you're a fan, you don't want to miss next week. Our 100th episode of Going Ringside. We are bringing back all the stars who will appear. Shawn Michaels, Trish Stratus, Bill Goldberg. We'll have a clip from the Hulkster himself and a lot of other megastars from Tony Khan and Linda McMahon to Tony Storm and Jeff Jarrett. There's going to be a massive amount of stars on our 100th episode. We're very excited. Tune in. Do not miss it. And once again, as we start 2025, you're going to get a lot of the old school stars. So if you're in any old school wrestling groups, share what's going on Going Ringside. We're going to have some great ones. And I will say, if you're an old school fan and haven't watched a lot of our show, go back on the archives. I mean, we've had a ton on. Jake Roberts, Arn Anderson, Ron Simmons, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, so many more. So go back and check those out right now. We've just had a lot of old school stars. So if you like the old school stars, we've got a ton in the archives. Go search Going Ringside. Scroll on YouTube's the best place to really look. You can just scroll and see all the stars we've had. Just search Going Ringside on YouTube, and you can watch a lot of those old school interviews. Bushwhacker Luke was one of my favorites, even if you liked the Bushwhackers back in the day. So thanks for joining us on this episode of Going Ringside. I'm Scott Johnson, and we'll see you back here next time.
This has been Going Ringside with The Local Station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on News4Jax Plus, as well as the News4Jax YouTube channel.